The first memory I have of the Swansea Grand was when I was about 5 years old. My parents were both in show business, so my dad was in the pantomime here, and my mother was in it as well. My father was Ugly Sister with Gladys Morgan, he was Cinderella, and my mother played the fairy godmother. And I was 5 years old, I think, but I can remember it now. We were living in London at the time, and my granny brought me all the way down to Swansea to see the panto. And it was wonderful, you know. But I'd seen pantos before. I'd been backstage with my parents, but, you know, the first one I think I ever remember, I was 3, when my father was in Glasgow, I think, in panto. And the next time I came to Swansea Grand was when I actually did the panto myself. And the funniest thing was, I was sat in the bar upstairs, and I was sitting under a poster, and the poster had my parents' name on it. It was like, you know, a fluke. But it was great. I did a panto with Stan Stennett. First time I'd worked with Stan. I knew him, of course, because he'd worked with my parents, but we did Robinson Crusoe, I think, and it was a fantastic show. We lasted till about middle of March. It ran from, I think, Christmas, must have been about 14 weeks. Sold out every night, unbelievable. But some of the things with Stan, he used to do all the old jokes, you know, but the kids loved it. He'd come on the stage, he'd go, tell him, and he'd say, hello, Putties, they'd all shout, hello, Billy, and he had him in the palm of his hand. I learned so much from Stan, panto-wise. He was great. And I remember one funny story, because the other side of this theatre was different. There used to be a bus station over there, and the stage door led out opposite a pub called the Volunteers. And one night we're on stage, and one of the stage hands was a coalman by day, and at night he'd work as a stage hand, see? And he was late this day, and he didn't realise the show had started. We're on stage, and he walked straight across the back of the stage with a black face. He went, all right, Stan? And Stan said, hello. And he put it in the act. It was unbelievable. No, it was great stuff. Oh, freaking heck. I've got lots of memories. And I came back here again with my own show. I did a show called Turn on the Taps, where I had 4 girl dancers with me, and we did a show all about the tap dancers. You know, Gene Kelly, Sammy Davis Jr., and we did like a 2-hour show, and it really went well, you know, and I toured it as well. But I've always had a great love of this theatre because of the feeling of the audience. I mean, they're much more warm than, dare I say it, than Cardiff audiences. I don't know what it is. I think it's the valleys people come down, and I was brought up in the valleys, and you get that camaraderie. I don't know what it is. They take you to their hearts if they like you. If they don't like you, look out. First time I met Stan, I was young. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and he was in Welsh Rabbit with a radio programme with my dad. It was a big thing in the 50s on light programming in those days. And then I didn't see him again until I was doing a summer season in Skegness, and Stan used to fly in and do the Sunday concerts at the theatre, and I used to go and watch him every night. And then my agent rang me. I'd just done Opportunity Knocks, and I'd won it, and they asked me to do the Swansea pantomime, and Stan was top of the bill. So that's the first time I really worked with him. And it was great experience. I learned so much from the way he handled an audience, how he could, you know, he got the kids in 2 seconds flat, and the way he'd walk on and he'd just look at the audience and he'd go, and they'd just applaud straight away. He just had it, you know. Yeah, great. I always wanted a tap dance. I'd seen Sammy Davis on television, and I wanted a tap dance. And at the time, my father had given up show business. He was running a pub. And my mother's old dancing teacher came up to the pub. I said, I want to dance like you. She said, well, come down, I'll teach you. So I started, and I loved tap dancing. So my father said, well, if you're going to go into show business, you just can't be a dancer. You'll be out of work by the time you're 30. He said, so you got to sing. I said, I can't sing. He said, you never tried. So he got on the piano and started playing a few songs for me, and we developed an act. And I got involved with a concert party. In the old days, they had concert parties going around the valleys. It was called the Debonair's concert party. So there'd be a pianist, there'd be me, there'd be a girl singer, a soprano, there'd be a tenor, and then we'd all go off in the car together in the dicky pose, and then we'd get about 30 bob each. But it was great grounding, you know. You learn your craft, how to handle an audience. That's where I started. And then eventually I got a bit of a lucky break, so I won Opportunity Knocks. And through Opportunity Knocks, that's why I got the panto in the Swansea Grand. And it just went on from there, really. And then after we finished here, Stan said to me, where can we do a summer season, John? I said, well, what about Porthcawl? I said, the pavilion's been empty for years. And he took on the pavilion and put his own show on. and it stacked them out. It was a fantastic show. He had the Curry's Dancing Waters, the Ballymontparnasse, the girls. There was me. There was another comic called Roy Lester. There was the Falcons, used to do the double slosh act. They were in panto with us. And it sold out for the summer season. And then I didn't see Stan for a while after that, because I went off and did, I'm being flashed now, I did the Palladium with Dorothy Squires. And then I toured with Dot for a while. And then I came back and did pantos with Stan later on, though. Yeah, I met Dorothy Squires. First recollection, I was 3 years old. I can still remember it. And my granny took me to see her because she'd stayed with my grandmother when she was a kid in London. My granny had a house in London. And when she went up to London first, she was only 16. She went up on a day trip. And my father was a pianist, and she walked into the agent's office and wanted an audition. So my old man said, where are you from? And she said, Llanelli. He said, oh, do you want to come and stay at my mother's? And that's how he got to know Dorothy. So when she came to Cardiff, my granny took me to see her. The next time I met Dot, I was about 19, I think, and I had a gig in London. And my father rang her up. He said, Dot, my boy's in London. Tell him to come here, Bert. She said, he can stay here. I turned up at this house. It had 22 rooms, a swimming pool, 4 acres of land. I couldn't believe it. She'd made it very big, you see, and by this time she was still with Roger Moore. He was doing The Saint at the time, but it was towards the end of the marriage, really. You could feel the atmosphere. So that's the first time I met Dot. And then I just kept, every time I worked in London, if ever I did a gig, that was my home for the week or the fortnight or whatever it was. And then I was lucky enough to, I got a recording contract, and they sent some of my stuff to Gibraltar for the Gibraltar Song Festival. Anyway, I win the Gibraltar Song Festival, and who's in the audience but Dorothy, because they'd asked her to go out to sing a special anthem they'd written for Gibraltar. She said, what are you doing? And she gave me the date. I can't remember it now, but it was 1970. And I looked at my diary and said, oh, I'm probably in Luck of Workman's, I said. She said, no, you're not. You're doing the Palladium with me. I said, what? She said, have you got any big arrangements? I said, well, I've got some about 10-piece. She said, no, we're having a 30-piece orchestra. It cost me on my fee to have the arrangements done, but it was a fantastic experience. And then from there on, I toured with Dot then. We went all over the country, every theatre in the country, Manchester Palace, Liverpool Empire, Cardiff, we went to the capital, Bristol Hippodrome, everywhere. And we ended up back at the Palladium a year to the day, and then we did the Royal Albert Hall. And then Dot went off and did the Carnegie Hall in New York. I couldn't do it because I couldn't get a work permit, but fantastic. I learned so much from watching Dorothy. Oh, just watching her take a bow was an experience. Yeah, after Roger left, Dorothy and him separated. There's a funny story, actually. She found out where he was living with Louisa, and she went round the house and she threw bricks through every window. And he came out and he grabbed her and he said, Dorothy, your hand is bleeding. She said, it's my blankety blank heart is bleeding. But she was in a terrible state after he left. I mean, she really was. She went to bed for 3 months and wouldn't get up. I mean, she was so depressed because not only she loved this man, she promoted him and made him a star. She took him to America. She told my mother she had $8 left in her purse when she'd married him in New York because she'd spent it all. And then she had to come back and start again. So she'd been out of the public eye for so many years and everybody thought, they'd forgotten you, Dot, and so on. So when she booked the Palladium, they all thought she was nuts. But how she started, she came to Llanelli first and did a show at the Regal. And I was on the bill as well. And she had it recorded for Decca Records. And it did very well. So she said, I'm going to do the Palladium next. And people thought she was nuts. They said, you have to put Tom Jones on the bill to fill the place. She sold out in 3 days. Sold out. They had horses holding people back. I mean, it was unbelievable. And from there on, it was just a whirlwind, But, yeah, that's it. So many good memories of Dorothy. Yeah, pantomime is an art form all of its own. In England and Wales and Scotland, everybody knows what a panto is. You speak to an American, they don't know what you're talking about. Because I used to do lots of ships, and you come across Americans, and they try to explain them. You say, well, the guy dresses up as a woman, and the woman dresses up as a man, and they're looking at you daft. They think mime is Marcel Marceau. Anyway, but it's a great experience for children. It's like a musical for kids. That's what I think. Musical theatre for children. They see dancing, they see comedians, And it's wonderful. It's a good experience. And I think it's the first time it brings children into going to theatres. I mean, I've been doing theatres. I was born in a theatre, really. I was living backstage most of my life until I was about 10. And then my father gave up the business and took a pub. But I did one of my first pantos here in the Grand. Then I did one in Manchester, and I did one in Liverpool with Vince Hill and Barbara Windsor and Bill Maynard. That was a great panto at the Royal Court. But money was no object. It was Howard and Wyndham, which was a big theatre company, all did lots of pantomimes. They sent me to London. I went to Nello and David and had thigh-length boots made to fit me. I had to have a piece of my hair taken so I could have a wig that was the right colour. I mean, they didn't mess about, you know. And that was a great panto. And Barbara was a case. I was so sad when Barbara passed. I mean, she was such a character, you know. I mean, we used to all congregate in Barbara's room because she had all the booze. And she was a very generous woman, you know. But I've got to tell you a funny story about Barbara, because she didn't care about anything. She was so open. And she used to walk up at the dressing room just in her knickers. I mean, didn't care who was in there. You know, come in, John, have a drink. And one day I said, hey, Babs, I said, you got all in your knickers. She said, oh, they're only my workers, darling. Only my workers. And the last time I saw Babs was up in London, because Larry Lamb, who was in Gavin and Stacey with me, he wrote a book, and Barbara went, because at the time he was in EastEnders, and Barbara was at the book launch. And she came over, and I said, hello, Babs, and she looked at me a bit strange. And then about 5 minutes later, she said, when was that panto we did, John? I said, 1972. But I twigged later when it came out that she was the start of the Alzheimer's was there. It took a while for her to remember who I was, you know, which is rather strange for us to be in a dressing room every day. But panto is a great thing for children, fantastic. Yeah, backstage at the Grand was a different kettle of fish in those days. I mean, there was the number 1 dressing room, and the phone was outside like a pay phone, and then there was number 2 dressing room and number 3 dressing room were adjoining, so I had to go through one to get to the other. So there was Ronnie Coyle's in the one, and I was in the one at the back, and there was who was this slosh act? Oh, the Falcons were doing a slosh act, and they get soaking wet with all this rubbish all over them. They have to wash off. And there was like a backyard, and it was freezing cold, and out there washing themselves off. Well, it was a totally different game in those days. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the last thing they think of, actually, is dressing rooms for people. Outside looks great. It's all glitz and glamour. Where's your dressing room? Oh, it's hook on the nail. Well, you know what I mean? Yeah. What I see now is how pantomimes have changed. I mean, when I was first in pantomime, first of all, we never had radio mics. So you'd have to project your voice, and they'd have to hear you in the back of the auditorium, which is good practice, obviously. You know, you'll project your voice. And you just have a hand mic or something to sing your songs through. But that was it. And then the gags have all changed as well. I mean, stuff we used to do, like the busy bee gag, where you used to spit water in somebody's face. Well, they wouldn't do it now, because they'll say it's health and safety, you'll catch a bug or something. And the schoolroom scene where the naughty boy gets a smack on the bum. Can't smack kids anyway, so that's out of the question. And I remember doing Robinson Crusoe, one of the last ones we did, and we couldn't have a man Friday who was subservient, a guy would be black and he'd be your servant. So we had a girl Friday who was my girlfriend, which is even better, really. But then, of course, all the technicalities they use today, things like back projection. And so instead of just a bloke with a white sheet walking behind you going, you know, look behind you, you've got something coming off on a big screen and all the different effects. It's totally different. And I don't think it's any better, to be honest, as far as the children are concerned. Because children are like mesmerised by whatever. If it's a guy in a white sheet, they think it's a ghost. You haven't got to go all technical for children. They just take it as it is. So that's what I think is different about pantos and the different jokes, as I say. And the things you can't do now because of the woke brigade, you know, that's it. Because a big part of pantomime with the Grand was Ryan and Ronnie. And I did my first TV shows with Ryan back in the 60s, I think it was 68. And I did a Welsh programme called Bear Nessa, which was Ryan, me, Margaret Williams and Bryn Williams. And from that, they put a pilot together called Ryan, Ronnie, Jill and Johnny, which is me, Gillian from Triban, and Ryan and Ronnie. And then it took off and became the Ryan and Ronnie show after that. Yeah, it was my first real introduction to TV, which was a good, actually it was a good learning curve, because when I did the Opportunity Knocks audition, I was an old hand. I'd done about 24 TV shows. But I couldn't speak Welsh at the time. I learnt later. So it was terrible. If I went wrong, I couldn't ad-lib, and some of the shows were live. So in the end, I went and learnt. I thought, well, I got to do it properly. So I went to the college and learned to speak Welsh after that. But yeah, Ryan was a great guy. I came to see him on his last panto. I think I was doing Porthcawl with Stan at the time, Stan Stennett, and then we finished a bit earlier, and I came over to see Ryan, and I was in his dressing room, and he said, I'm going off to America, he said, to see a man who was my best man after the panto. He said, and they warned him not to because it was humid, and he suffered from asthma. And unfortunately, Ryan got an asthma attack when he was in America. They brought on a heart attack, and unfortunately, we lost him. It was a hell of a shock. Yeah. Of course, I've been in show business nearly all my life, and what people remember me for now is Gavin and Stacey. You get people shouting, "Hello, Marco," and all this, because it's amazing what television does, you know. But I got a call from my agent to go to an audition at the College of Music in Cardiff. And I walk in, and the guy chucks the script at me. He said, "There we are," and it was Dave Coach's part. So I read it, and they said, "Yeah, we like what you do, but you don't look like a bus driver." I said, "What?" So I'm on my way out. I said, "Hang on, could you do this?" I said, "What is it?" "The disc jockey part." I said, "Okay." So he said, "I'd lib a bit," so I did. Anyway, half an hour later, I get the phone call, I got the part. So I did the first episode of that when I was the disc jockey at the wedding in Gavin and Stacey. And I thought that was it. And then they rang me again and said, "Oh, we want you again." I said, "What, the disc jockey?" "Oh, no, you're the same bloke. You're doing a different job now. You're doing the bingo in the club." So then on the second season, I'm the bingo caller when Bryn walks in with the gang, you know. "Hello, Bryn. How the family is it?" "I and Di. And Dave. Do you know Dave?" I said, "Dave coaches Dave." "I don't know you, but you know my wife from the clinic. I'd send her your love, but you know what that gets you." That was the first line. And then I thought that was it. Then I got another call. "You've got a cafe now. You call Marco." So it just went on from there. But it's an amazing thing, television. I mean, I walked down the street 10 years later, and people were going, "Oh, hello, Marco." I don't even look the same. My hair's gone white for a start, but they still remember. I went for my injection for the COVID jab. It's dark and it was raining, and I've got my mask on. I went in a big queue, and a woman says, "You that bloke off the Gavin and Stacey? How do you know it?" She said, "I recognise your voice." Oh my God. So there we are, it never leaves you. So whatever you do, it makes your mark.